spotlight both can. Great. If you could spotlight us, that would be great too. So we can have for the recording. There
Oh,
we go.
you're on your computer now, Hallie, right?
Yes, it finally worked.
Perfect.
Technology is always supposed to make our lives easier, and then when it doesn't work, it, throws everything off. But anyways, you guys, enough about my computer. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. We have a fabulous, wonderful guest. She is a top producer, community engager, wonderful and visual agent in person, Kendra Miller. So Kendra, thank you so much for
Good morning.
joining me.
Oh, good morning. Thank you
Yes.
for having me. I'm super impressed that you are all here at 8 a.m. on a Friday. That just speaks volumes to who you are as people and agents and how you care about your business.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yes. And thank you for being here at 8. So, Kendra, tell everyone here on the call a little bit more about yourself. Who are you? What's your relationship with real estate?
Okay. And, Hallie, I don't want to totally, change this format, but I do want this to be useful for those people that are on the call. I'm not sure if I'm looking at my camera, looking at you, if I'm looking weird, tell me. Um, if anyone has questions or I haven't answered a question thoroughly or you want to hear more, I do hope you'll ask, right? I mean, here to be helpful. I don't want to be boring or, have you log off and be like, wow, that was a waste of time. So, Hallie, if you take questions, I'm really open to them. Um, I've been doing this September 1 will be 21 years. And I can't believe that time has flown by. And Hallie has prepared me with some questions. One of the first ones I thought was really interesting, and it said, "What is my relationship with real estate?" And I wrote, I like to be prepared, and so you'll see that I have pages of notes, but I promise you don't have to hear it all if it's not interesting. But I almost said that I have a love-hate, or maybe it's a love-dislike relationship with real estate, and I really love all the people that I've met. My husband always says that helping people buy and sell a home is probably one of the best things that you can do for someone, and significant in their life. And I do really enjoy being part of that process. I'm amazed by the people that I met that I would never meet, and that they care about my family and me genuinely, that have really interesting conversations. I've gotten to know people in my community that I would have never done. I had a corporate job prior to coming to real estate, and I was never doing any of those things or meeting those people or getting involved in my community. So I feel like it's really been a gift in that way. Um, I will say that I dislike all the worry and stress and all the paperwork that just keeps coming and doesn't feel like it's to the benefit of our clients. It feels like it's more CYA or the lawyers involved. And I know that other states do it with much less paperwork, and I always wonder why California cannot. Um, and there's even been some times in these 21 years where, I've been pretty unhappy, and I think, gosh, maybe I'd want to get out of real estate. And one of those times has just happened. And I don't know that I've ever really seriously thought about getting out, but I've just been unhappy. And I went ahead and hired a coach. And I have to say that I feel very empowered by that decision.
Kendra, thank you for being vulnerable. I think that, particularly being a top producer, new agent, whatever it is, there's a lot of mental play that comes into real estate. We're managing expectations and not only for our clients and making sure that they get the best service possible, and also managing our mental health, how we, compartmentalize things, how we adapt and react to things. And that's what makes a business owner.
Yes, absolutely. I really realized when I hired this coach, and I said I wanted two things. One is I really wanted work on my listing presentation, and then I wanted someone to talk about mindset. Um, I've never had a coach before in the 21 years. I've always just done it by myself through hard work and a really supportive husband who happens to be incredibly creative and has come up with probably most of my great ideas. But yeah, I think mindset, and trying to embrace the things that I tell my kids.
And just taking action on that too, recognizing that it was something in your life or in your business that you needed help with, and you went out and sometimes we need that outside perspective, right? Someone to
Absolutely.
look at what we're doing, to assess what we're doing, and then be able to help and enhance in a way that's going to make us feel better, and at the end of the day, serve our clients better, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more, Kendra. You're an individual agent, yes? So that is in itself being a top producer, and I hate to say doing it on your own because I know you have other people working behind the scenes. Describe that a little bit more. What's that like being an individual producer?
You know, I've actually I enjoy it, and I think that Keller Williams has always had this approach that you should build a team, get bigger, and that was just never something that I really believed in or wanted to do. My husband always said that's a big nut, that once you start really adding office space and staff, and that was a lot to carry, and I've never really felt that financial pressure at all. The flip side is that I really do everything myself. I mean, I have an assistant who works part-time for me, and she now is really helping me with my social media. And, I prep my files, but she scans them and uploads them. Um, but I do feel ultimately that it's made me a better agent because I know the forms. I mean, in addition to just, I do all my paperwork with my clients, whether it's disclosures or escrow paperwork or, um, I'm the one that schedules the inspections. I know my vendors. I, call the city when needed. It's when you're on your own, you do it all. And I think it's made me a much better agent. It does mean, though, that I've had a lot less time. That maybe I think people on teams have more flexibility with their time.
But like you said, it does allow you to really have a pulse on what's happening, not only in the market, but also day to day with your clients. And
Yes.
I think that's very commendable, the fact that you're still growing and growing and you're having such a high involvement with your business. It gives you this certain level of service that I'm sure when people are working with you. So speaking of kind of like the market and your clients, what are you seeing right now in the market? Where's business coming for you? Where do you see it kind of in the next 6 months? What does that look like?
I wish I knew, right? Like those people wish they bought Apple stock when it first came or whatever. Um, I really think this market is very weird. The last time I thought it felt so weird was um, probably right before the short sales. That was for me very new at that time. Um, I do think there's going to be a blip in August with the new rules about commission. I think that, I'm hopeful to get this listing. I'm going to listing appointment next week. And I've already told them that I think they should wait till after Labor Day, give this a few weeks to kind of settle down. I also just never felt like here in Long Beach that summer was the best time to sell. I think fall is actually better. And so for this particular house, I just think that, anyways, I just feel like waiting a few weeks to get over the initial August 16th date would be helpful. Um, Personally, I do get a lot of my business from past clients and referrals and my farm. I built a farm around my home by door knocking. And so when I talked about loving, one of the parts I love is that I can walk through my community and see people I know everywhere. And it's really made it feel more like a community. Um, but personally, I've been making calls for years to people that never call me back. Right? Hey, it's Kendra. I'm calling to check in. I know you're busy. I'll call you again in 6 months. And it's just beginning to feel more and more like a waste of time. And
Mm.
I'd rather focus my efforts on people that know and like me, or at least take time to chat, and so I'm personally thinking about changing my business. I'm not sure how that fits with the KW model and the numbers, but I think I'm going to really devote my time to calling people that I personally like and enjoy and that like me. And I think it's going to be better mentally, like you mentioned, and mindset, and just I think overall better for the bottom line, since that's really where most of my business comes from, anyways.
I mean, that hardest step is doing what you said you're going to do, which is being intentional with it. Calling for calling's sake, for whatever reason, isn't always yielding the results that people want, right? We're calling maybe the wrong people, or maybe we're using the wrong message, or again, just like you said, maybe it's just not time for them, or they're busy. And I think the important part is to look, just like you've done, and said, what is it that makes me feel whole? What is it that's going to bring me more business? Because calling those people that you enjoy, you may get just as much business as if you were picking up the phone and just calling people geographically around an area of a listing, right? It's
Yes.
it's all about your intentions. That's the important part, is being intentional about that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you farm, that's great. You said that you door knock, which is awesome. A lot of agents have hesitations around door knocking. Any tips or suggestions you've got for anyone here on the call that's maybe hesitant to go out and to pick up their hand and
Knock, and don't knock too soft. You got to knock, they need to hear you. Um, you know, it's funny. It was hard. Door knocking was hard for me to get going and get out there. But it really has paid the biggest dividends for me. Um, I would go with, at first it was just note papers, and then I did an Excel spreadsheet of, the person, their name, their address. And if I didn't, I'd always come home and check that I had the right person, the name, like that I copied it down right and got it right. Or maybe it was a renter and not a owner, it was good just to know those things. And then I just took copious notes as soon as I left the door. And then when I got home, I typed them up. I'm sure now there's much more efficient. Maybe you can talk into your phone and record, but um, and then every month when I'd go back, I knew, because I knocked monthly, and I'd leave something, right? Whether it was a notepad or postcard or something. And notepads I found were most valuable, because then when I missed someone and I went back the next time, I could say, oh, sorry, I missed you. Your new flowers look beautiful, right? Because you start seeing the same house over and over, that they changed their landscaping or they changed their paint, or, even if you've never met them, I would leave little notes a lot of the time. And if I knew them at all, I always said, I'm so sorry I missed you. I hope you're well, and it's the hardest thing sometimes is getting away from people that, I found myself sometimes being in someone's house an hour and I didn't have those skills initially to get myself out. And every once in a while, you'd have a few people be not super nice. And at some point, if I just wasn't there, or I was too feeling dejected, I just ended it and went on. But I would do it about 3 days a week, and had my farm that I wanted to get to for the whole month, and then start again.
Yeah. And the notepads, that's a classic, right? Leaving a little note, but you're building relationships. I mean, that's the
Right.
point of door knocking, right? Is that you're not just physically going out and doing an activity, but you're noticing things like when they have new flowers, or you're building such a relationship now that, oh, hope you have a great summer with the kids, or, whatever that looks like. You're turning your complete strangers into your sphere of influence, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Talk to me a little bit more about, like, let's say you had to wipe the slate clean, and it's, Kendra Miller getting her license all over again and she's starting over. What is it that you wish you knew today that you could have told yourself back then when you started?
So I'd like to answer that sort of in two parts, because Hallie, I thought you asked a really good question. Maybe you'll get to it. And I think it ties in to anyways, it was question 3 and 4 on your list. But one was, what are some of the most important things I knew that I've learned over the many years of experience? And then also what I would do differently if I were to start now. So I want to answer the question you just asked, and I'd like to come back to the other one. I think, so we've been talking about farming. I would still definitely do farming. I know that's not tech savvy. I know that it's hard. But if you got into real estate for the people, it is the best way to get out and meet people, and they will invite you into their homes. And, it's, if you do it in an area that you live also, just be forewarned, because you'll run into them at Ralph's and be thinking as you go down the aisle, what's that person's name? I just met them, or like, but I do think that I've always thought, and I know I could do it now, but that I should have pursued trust attorneys more, because it is one of those D's, right? Of those things that always happen regardless of the market, is death. And I don't mean to be nonchalant about it, but when people pass, a lot of times they need realtors. And the only thing, or even divorce attorneys, there's a lady in KW who's really built her whole niche around divorce, but that's not always the easiest, right? You're dealing with people at really a rough time in their life. Not that death is easy either, but sometimes it's a little different. The only thing about those two is that you potentially will have to travel, right? If you get a trust attorney, their clients aren't necessarily all local. And I don't really travel. Long Beach is a big city, right? So I do a lot here and in the surrounding cities, but I don't go north and I don't go much further south. And so that would be my only caveat to any of you that decided to pursue that, is that you do have to be ready to get in your car and drive. I also think that I have had pretty good luck with realtor referrals, where I meet someone and they tell me where they're moving and I say, oh, let me find you someone great. And I call the office, usually if there's a KW office nearby. And then I ask for the team leader and I tell them what I'm looking for, which is essentially myself, right? I mean, looking for a single agent, someone who's going to provide really good service. And then I call and I interview 3 agents. And then I decide usually who I think is best for my client. And you get your 25% referral fee, you can stay involved. I tell the people that I'm helping, like, hey, I do this because I want you to find someone great. They do pay me a small percentage of their commission, but it does allow me to stay involved. If you have questions, you want my opinion, and I get a fair amount every year, and it can add up. I don't often get a lot of referrals this way. And so I've often thought if I were to start again, I would probably be more deliberate about those realtor to realtor referrals. And Halley, if I could go back a question,
Yes.
is you had asked me kind of also what I've learned over the years that I'd like to share. And I would say this, because I thought about this question a lot and then I changed my answer and, I went back and forth. I want you to know that I think difficult situations end if you're in one right now. That's sort of the good and the bad of real estate, right? Is that sometimes it's a somewhat finite period of time. I mean, I've had a buyer go 14 years from start to finish. I've had buyers go 7 years. I've had buyers go years. But most of the time at the end of a transaction, you really like your clients and you talk to them every day. And then all of a sudden you're not talking to them every day, right? Maybe it's 3 days, once a week, once a month, every 3 months. But if you're in something that's not great, it does have an ending. I'm really trying to use my failures to make things better in my business instead of dwelling on them. So last year, I'd gotten a referral from Dougie, or someone in our office. He wasn't even part of our office yet, but he knew someone who needed, and he said, "We'll talk to a KW agent." And she had her own mindset. I didn't meet her needs, but I remember pulling up my website and it wasn't where I'd wanted. I'd been talking about needing to fix it when KW dropped placed her, and it motivated me to spend the time and the money. And I'm really happy with how my website turned out. Or why I hired a coach was I'd had a listing that I felt like I had one last year that I really felt didn't go well, and I tried to make a difference and probably didn't. And then recently I had one and I thought, okay, let me learn from this. And I also would tell you, don't be afraid to ask questions, right? So when I don't get listings or I don't get selected, I always ask someone, I'm trying to make myself better. You don't get a lot of feedback in this business, except, people want to review you. What could I have done better to earn your business, right? And that importance of asking those questions, asking for the listing before you leave, or even before you even meet with them. Hey, if you're comfortable with what I'm going to tell you and you're comfortable with the amount, are you going to be ready to sign the listing paperwork today? That's something my new coach just told me. You got to ask before you even show up. you know, that's one thing about real estate is that you have to put yourself out there, right? And you become a little more comfortable at asking, ask if they're going to hire you, you know. And then I had one other note I wanted to say. I guess that was really it. Thank you.
Those are really good points. Going back to the starting over, I think there's a couple different things that you mentioned in there. Trust, probate, divorce, any of those difficult to navigate transactions are some that realtors tend to shy away from. And lots of times it's just from lack of knowledge or,
Yep.
experience or even just confidence in the topic, right? To understand how to navigate what that looks like after death, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. So I think you're spot on with that, as well as agent to agent referrals. There are people out there that's a huge chunk, if not half or more of their business. We don't have as many people moving here to Southern California. God love our prices and interest rates and things like that we have going on now with our price points. But even the outgoing referrals, that's something that's definitely, there's money to be made there. And you're also helping your client get the same type of experience they would get with you as an agent. There's value there in that
Yes.
conversation, right? Like if
Yes.
I was moving across the country, I would have no, as a consumer, I'd have no idea where to start. You would just probably Google, right? Or call people, but you can intentionally ask questions as an agent from an agent perspective to know whether or not this is going to be a good agent that's going to match their needs, right?
And they don't know that you know that, right? So
Right.
they don't know that you can help them find a realtor in another city, whether it's California or not. They might say, oh, well, I know Kendra, but she doesn't work that area, right?
Mhm.
It is a really good way to help your clients, gives you a reason to follow up, right? I mean, I like to have a reason to follow up with someone. So
Mhm.
it's just, you're right. It's just a really good, it's a good way to help also.
It's a good way to help. Yeah. So I kind of asked something like this later, but George put in the chat and I want to ask that. So he asked, how do you manage your work-life balance and production? Any tips? This is a good one.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to see if I had any I you know, for the last now almost 21 years, I think I've really spent a ton of time either working, and when I wasn't working, I said, then I want to be with my family. I have two kids, and my oldest starts college in the fall, and my youngest is just about to start high school. So um I can see kind of this time of not working, and obviously my family's always, it's going to be incredibly important to me. I think my kids aren't going to need me as much anymore, maybe want to be with me as much. But so my balance probably hasn't always been there. I'm going to say, being a single agent, I probably haven't always found it. Like I mentioned, my husband, he's incredibly supportive, really there. Is not a dad that thinks that being with his kids is babysitting. You know, he's like, I'm a dad. I had nannies over the years. I have an involved mom, and we had a mother-in-law too. And, so all of that helped. Um, but in terms of making my work time count, some of it was just working longer and longer hours, which I know is not what people want to hear, and probably not the best way to get about business, but it is how I've done my business. But I will say that finding quiet time is really helpful. When my kids were young, it was after I put them to bed, because I really tried to make dinner time, being present. Um, I do like working when other people aren't working. So like on the 4th of July, before we went, out for parties, I happened to have both kids away at summer camp. I worked on files all day, but it was just like a good, like I find getting ahead. I make a lot of lists. Um, I try to stay very organized during my transactions, even if it's, I don't always keep my files as clean as I would like, but I do use a CRM, and I use the plans function, so I know what needs to happen at certain dates. Um, I I'd say in the last 2 years, it might seem something silly, but I actually do a timeline that I found helpful for my clients, right? I'm like, hey, we've just gotten into escrow, and I send them an email and it says timeline. And then it says, our acceptance date is June 2nd. inspection contingencies, and it will say, June 10th, inspection contingencies, June 12th, appraisal contingency, right? And like just seeing that in writing, and I print it or email it to them, and I print it and I put it in my file, even though I have everything on my CRM, so that I can just open that file and see the dates immediately. I found that's helpful. I do really think asking for help when you need it. I call the legal hotline a lot. I tap into Simon. When I was first starting out, I had an amazing mentor who, Shannon, just made incredible time for me for my first year because I was not productive. And, just, I guess, asking for help when you need it.
Mm-hmm. Great productivity tips, keeping things clean and clear in your brain and with your clients and in the files is such a key important part to that balance. It helps create that structure, right? I'm waking up, I'm working, this is what I'm going to accomplish today, and then now it's my family time. You kind of have to intentionally say, this is the time that I'm spending with my family, whether it's dinner, evenings, weekends, one day a week, whatever it is. You have to make a conscious effort to say, now is family time, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I
Now,
do write everything down. I'm not someone who relies on remembering it. And I do document in my notes, in my CRM a lot. And I think in a way we're getting more and more litigious, so I'm documenting even more now. But I have found that has been incredibly helpful, that I can go back to. I even document, phone numbers, like, hey, I talked with this person at the HOA, or this is the president of the, that I talked with, and here's their phone number, here's their email, because you'd be surprised a year or two later when you need to go back and reference it and you haven't. Maybe because you're selling in it that same building, or I don't know, you worked with that agent before and you remembered something about them or their birthday, or anything. I really try to put as much as possible in documentation, in my CRM.
so important to have all that. We can't remember everything.
No.
I'd like to think so. So I know we're running short on time. This is a great conversation. I could literally talk to you all day. I do want to make sure this, Kendra, you are in Gary's mastermind, and I do want to just touch on that one there at the end a little bit. Anything that you're learning or sharing in those circles, that you can share here with the group?
It's interesting because usually, we meet every few months, on Zoom, and there's always an economy section, and what's happening with the economy. And usually there's tips like do this, hire an assistant, hire, an ISA, or, like, or just different things. But this last one, probably ties into what we did at the beginning, Halley, and I wrote down, I just, again, wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. It was really more about mindset. He gave a definition of mindset and attitude, and getting back to basics, and what are your beliefs, and what are your personal goals, and kind of the importance of making sure you have your personal goals before your professional goals and your spiritual goals, and whatever that might look like for you. But it really was kind of going back to basics. I think the market's weird for everyone right now. And I just think that that's where they thought we should be focusing.
Because we are going to see so many shifts and changes here over the next couple weeks, month, now with these new open house forms that people are going to have to sign up. I mean, so much is going to change for the consumer. It's important that we have our minds right before going into that, right?
Yeah, and I would say, and you guys are all here, so I got to believe that you do this already. Go to as much training as you can. You need to know those forms. You need to know forms in general, right? Because there's so many of them, as I alluded to in the beginning. But go to the trainings, get yourself informed.
Yeah, I love that. What else? I know you've got your little slew of notes. What else do you want to touch on for us this morning before we kick off our Friday and weekend productivity?
I guess I'd love to know if there's any questions that I didn't answer, and just to say thank you. I do believe in that adage that when you teach, you're the one who learns more. And so thank you for inviting me, Halley. Thank you all for coming, because it really, your questions, made me think about my business and what I'd want to share, and what has been important to me. And it's been very beneficial to me, probably more beneficial to me than to you. Thank you.
I love it. It's such a kind heart, right? You guys, I mean, I can't even, just so humble. And thank you, Kendra. we all rise together. I think that's the important part, right? When we pour into each other, we share, there's plenty of business to go around. We're here in Southern California with literally millions of people here in our geographic area that, learning from each other and lifting each other up like this is essential to that success as we all move forward into this kind of unknown charted territory of what this new market is going to look like. So thank you for being generous and sharing those things. You guys, Kendra Miller, go on to social medias, follow her. You guys, she's always been very generous. Reach out to her. Definitely somebody that is always been a real giver and a real sharer of her knowledge. And so thank you very much, Kendra, for joining me this Friday. Great tips again. You guys focus on that farming and door knocking. I really loved that. Mindset is key. If you're struggling or having difficulties in your business right now, call me, talk to me. Let's talk about what it would look like to get a coach, get accountability. Maybe it's just a model or system that you're missing to help create that clarity for you to move forward. So thanks. Thank you again, Kendra. You guys have a good Friday. Make it productive. Let's see some open houses. Reach out if you need anything. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Halley.
Thank you. Bye-bye.